This video is part 2 for chapter 4, looking at communications. What we're going to start looking at now is the whole idea of listening and listening skills. Listening is so important. One of the things we ask is complete that self-assessment that's talking about listening. When you're looking at the various levels of listening, all right, there is marginal, where you're really not paying attention. You've kind of checked out. You have evaluative level. In other words, you're kind of paying attention. The thing is, you're judging the message. And once you see something that you don't particularly care for, you don't accept, you have stopped listening. And what you're doing is, in your mind, you're putting together a rebuttal. You're thinking about what it is that you're actually going to say. And then you have projective listening. And now that's, as it says here, the best hope for true communication, where what you're doing is you're projecting back to the sender what it was that you heard and what you understood. You are reflecting back, that empathic listening aspect. You are reflecting back the content and feeling of what it is that the person said. That is the best level of listening that you can possibly have, particularly in an emotional situation. Listening is the communication skill that we should be using the most. A majority of our time awake is spent in some sort of communication. Almost half of it listening. The thing is, listening as a skill is the poorest skill that we have. We typically teach people in school fantastic ways as far as sending communication. How do we speak in public and things like that. We don't do much in the way of listening. We can actually think faster than someone speaking. The rate of speech for the average person is around 125 words per minute. We can actually hear and understand anywhere between 400 and 600 words per minute. So the question I ask is, what are you doing with that extra time? A majority of our time, it just gives us the opportunity to wander. So one of the things we want to be thinking about from a listening standpoint is, as the person is talking, as we're capturing the information, we're summarizing it in our heads as we listen. If you tend to be a fast talker, one of the things you may want to do is slow down so that people can understand you a bit better. That is something that I have to work on. I have a tendency to talk relatively fast. Our listening is relatively inefficient because we're not really tuned into and trying to summarize the things that someone is saying. This is really kind of interesting as far as the research on this. You have a 10-minute oral presentation. The average listener understands and retains 50% right after it's over. After 2 days, it drops to only a quarter as far as what was understood and retained. After a week, only about 10%. And the thing is, we can only keep a few bits of information in short-term memory, otherwise it goes. And we have to find some way of moving it to the long-term memory. As we age, our listening skills drop. As it says here, first and second graders listen about 90% of the time. Junior high, about 44%. High school, it drops to about 28%. I'm wondering what it is when you hit college, all right? It's hard work. Listening and true listening is really hard work, and it's things that we have to work on and improve. Active listening is one of the most important skills that we can actually have. It has a major impact on our job success and our personal relationship. We can improve our productivity, our ability to influence others, and persuade and negotiate. It's amazing how, if we show someone that we're truly trying to listen and understand what it is that they're saying, they will have a tendency to try to understand more as far as what it is that we're saying. Now, some tips for better listening skills. First of all, pay attention. You have to pay attention. And one of the things that you can do to help with that is make sure that you face that person. Too many times we have a tendency to sit behind a desk, or we're focused on our phone or our computer or something like that. Put all that aside and focus in on just that speaker. Stay tuned in to what it is that they're saying. Don't let your mind wander. Don't assume things and then interrupt. One of the problems that we have is our interruptions will take them off track as far as what they were trying to get across. And really watch for those nonverbal cues. See what it is that might match and what may not match what it is that they're saying, the words that they're saying. Ask questions if you need clarification. Take notes if you have to. Sometimes the simple fact of taking notes can really help with our understanding and help us stay focused. Now the thing is, many times somebody will be talking about something, and here we are, we're taking notes, we're thinking about what it is that we're writing, and we miss some of the things that they say. So you need to make sure that you're very effective as far as your note-taking is concerned. And analyze and think and organize and repeat in your mind what it is that you've heard. Again, you have the extra time because you can listen and hear 4 times as fast as what they're typically speaking. Evaluate what it is that they're saying after you've gotten the information. Don't do it while they are talking. Listen, capture it, and then make a judgment. Evaluate things based on facts. Paraphrase back what it is that they are saying. In other words, reflect back the content and feeling of what they've said. And again, watch for those nonverbals. What is it that they're really trying to get across? What are they really saying with their body language, with their tone of voice, things like this. In our responses, there are different ways that we can respond. Again, there's a self-assessment that you can do so that you can get an understanding as far as how you typically respond to someone else. The different response styles. You have advising. In other words, giving people information, giving people advice. The thing is, don't give it unless they ask for it, because giving it too readily can shut them down or build undue dependence on you. Diverting. In other words, somebody's telling you something and what you do is you change the subject. Maybe they're telling you about an issue that they had, and what you start doing is telling about your background and your experiences. No. Stay focused on what it is that they're saying. Probing. Asking for questions is another response style. Reassuring someone. That may be appropriate when they lack confidence. The thing is, you don't necessarily need to do that all the time as far as pacifying what it is that they're saying. Reflecting back, paraphrasing back the message to the person is one of the best things that you can learn how to do. Learning to be empathic. In other words, understanding their feelings and reflecting back the content and feeling of what they're saying, especially when they are emotional about something. When you start thinking from a management standpoint, there are different communication styles based on the situation that you have. There's going to be times when you need to be autocratic as far as your communication style. In other words, okay, this is what you're going to do, period, the end, I'm the boss. Or it could be an emergency situation. There are going to be times you need to be consultative. In other words, asking for input, but you're going to make the final decision. Participative. In other words, getting their input and being a part of the problem-solving process. And then there's the laissez-faire. In other words, you guys go ahead and get it done. Let them be in charge. Depending on situations will determine what kind of style you use. If it's time, an emergency, go ahead and make the quick decision. You're using the autocratic. Do you have all the information that you need, or do you need to get more information from people? Is there going to be an issue of acceptance as far as what it is that you're saying? If people aren't going to comply, you're not going to be able to lead. And then the capability. What is it that they can do? What kind of motivation do they have as far as, first of all, participating in the decision-making process, and second of all, can they actually do some of those things? People come with emotions. That's all there is to it. I know people say, okay, we need to leave emotions out of work. Well, people are going to come in with emotions whether you like it or not. The thing we have to remember as far as our own selves is what we can do to manage our emotions. We cannot necessarily manage our emotions. We can't necessarily help how we feel about something. We have total control over our behavior. Just because you might be upset about something doesn't mean that you have to yell at somebody else. Our emotions and feelings are revealed through our nonverbals. In other words, looking at the body language, looking at our facial expressions, thinking about the tone of voice and things. Some of that may come out with that. Emotional labor is how we express our feelings. And sometimes being nice can be very difficult, especially when we may be upset about something. Understanding our own and others' feelings is really important. It requires the expression of feeling through desired behavior, okay, as far as our emotional labor is concerned. And the regulation is important. What are we doing to encourage positive emotional expressions versus negative? As a manager, we need to make sure that people are understanding that, yes, you may be upset about something, here's how you should be acting, and how with them, help them with their behavior as far as what it is that they should be doing. If you have someone who is emotional, don't argue, okay? Do not mirror their negativity. Don't belittle them at all. What you want to do is use empathic listening, where you are reflecting back to them the content and feeling of what they're saying. You're upset about this because, sort of thing. Using these reflective statements can really help as far as validating their feelings, and it's okay. And then getting into an actual discussion. When somebody their emotions are at high level, they are not going to be listening. By showing that you're trying to understand where it is that they're coming from, validating their feelings and some of the issues they're running into, their emotional level will come down. And at that point, you can have a conversation. Then there's the idea of criticism. Now, criticism is basically a judgment, an evaluation of something. Nobody likes to be criticized. However, constructive criticism is exceptionally important. When you start talking about feedback, people need that constructive criticism. In other words, here's some things that were wrong. Here's what can be done to improve it. It's painful. Nobody likes to have their shortcomings pointed out. What we're trying to do is change some of the behavior. When you are being criticized, find ways to learn and improve from it, because you have to remember that is how they perceive you. That is their perception. And a person's perception for them is truth. Don't get defensive or emotional, all right? And learn to take action. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to agree with it. Somebody gives you some feedback and they're showing you some of the things you can be done. Take it, think about it. Later, go back and say, here's what I'm going to do. As a manager, one of the things that we have to do is learn how to give constructive criticism effectively. It says here praise. One of the things we want to do is catch people doing something right. The more we can catch people doing something right, the higher the probability that it will be repeated. You actually earn the right to give people some of that constructive feedback by finding things that they have done in the past and doing continuous praise. That doesn't mean, hey, you came in alive today and you have to praise them and give them, all kinds of strokes and things like that. What it does mean is when they do something right, you find it and you tell them, hey, I really appreciate what you did. That gives you the right at a later date, when something does go wrong, to share it. It needs to be immediate wherever possible, okay? Don't let it sit there and stew. Focus on the deed or the issue, the behavior, not the person. Do not make it personal. Every time you sit there and say you, pointing a finger at them, you have to remember there's three pointing right back at you. Whenever you talk about you did this, that puts people on the defensive. You focus on the behavior. Be specific. Do not say always or never. People do not do things always or do not do things never. You have to make sure that you have facts. Be positive and clear on what the new behavior is that's being sought. The thing is, punishment doesn't work. All right, all it does is create bad feelings. Positive reinforcement does. So you give somebody some of that constructive feedback. They make some difference they make some changes, they do start to do things positively, you need to make sure you give them positive reinforcement for that. There's also another self-assessment, 4.3. Go ahead and do that and look over the information that's there. Those are some of the key points from the chapter. If you have questions, let me know.